Today on Notsam Wrestling, Zack Ryder returns to the WWE, but what of Matt Cardona? Mike Santana has already lost the TNA championship. The men's War Games team is getting flushed out. The return of Survivor Series elimination matches and so much more. This is Notsam Wrestling. Welcome to Notsam Wrestling. And a lot has happened in the week. A lot of it has to do with Survivor Series. A lot of it has to do with Blood and Guts. A lot of it has to do with the man of the hour, the man himself, John Cena, and of course, the John Cena tournament. Now, I had said from the beginning of this John Cena tournament that I really felt like one of the goals and one of the inevitabilities of the John Cena Last Time Is Now tournament is that it opens the door for giving opportunity to people far beyond the winners of the tournament. Every John Cena Last Time Is Now tournament match has some of that John Cena dust sprinkled on it. So active roster superstars participating in this tournament, it opens the conversation up. When you have the Miz and Jey Uso, when you have Sheamus, when you have and Shinsuke Nakamura, we can start to have these conversations about what a match with that superstar and John Cena would potentially look like. It gives the opportunity for NXT guys to come up and have matches in Madison Square Garden. It gives the opportunity for guys who don't even work here to come into the WWE and have a match that is a high-stakes match, because every match in the 16-man tournament is a guaranteed high-stakes match because of the way it's been set up. John Cena has often talked about, and this is not just part of this retirement tour, but in interviews outside of it. When I interviewed John Cena a few years ago, when he was doing the promotional run for Fast and Furious, and we ended up talking a lot about wrestling, he talked about his belief in pro wrestling and the way you pass energy forward and the way you give opportunities and the way that the whatever wrestling has given to you, you then give back to wrestling so that the business itself continues to prosper. And I think that having this tournament creates opportunities not just for the winner, but for everybody that's in the tournament. And one of those people that it created an opportunity for was the man himself, the man of the hour, Matt Cardona, AKA, maybe no longer FKA. You would say FKA, formerly known as, but now I think we go back to also known as Zack Ryder. LA Knight's mystery opponent on SmackDown, the question mark that was labeled as his opponent for the John Cena Last Time Is Now tournament was indeed Zack Ryder, a.k.a. Matt Cardona. Something that, when this tournament was first announced, maybe we said that that's what would happen. Maybe it's not. Look, we're not here to gloat, okay? We're here to just lay down what's going on and look forward. The fact is that I had Matt Cardona on just last week. He's on Notsam Wrestling on the Sirius show on Pro Wrestling Nation. He's on every Tuesday. We do the Broski Breakdown. And of course, we've been talking about the John Cena tournament, and I pitched him how I thought it should go down. And I told him that I thought that he should be in this tournament, but that I also thought that he had to come out to the woo. It had to happen. Regardless of how he feels about it, regardless of what, like the audio cue, the connection that's going to be made with the audience is that woo. And when LA Knight was standing in the ring and we heard woo, you know it. I was like, yes, that's what you're waiting for, that initial, because listen, the Matt Cardona music is great, but the WWE audience, when the first couple notes of Matt Cardona's music kick in, they're not going to know what that music is. There's a chance that they might not even know what that name is. There are a lot of people who just watch WWE and that's what they watch. But they decided to go all the way with it and just say this is Zack Ryder, even though Matt Cardona had wrestled as Matt Cardona on NXT. But when he wrestled as Matt Cardona in NXT, there was very little reference to Zack Ryder, interestingly enough. It was almost like, because the character differences between Zack Ryder and Matt Cardona are kind of minimal, in the sense that you could argue that Matt Cardona is a evolved Zack Ryder. I don't think that Zack Ryder was all that different from who Matt Cardona was at that period of time in his life. And, I hate to say that because he ended up with a neck brace in a wheelchair having his girl stolen from him, but maybe that's just the place that Cardona was in his life. All those years ago doesn't mean that's who he is now. Now he's married to a WWE diva. You can't really say anything about this guy. This guy is married to a WWE diva, leaves every town that he goes into with a fanny pack full of cash. So what are you going to say about him, right? Clearly, he's figured out how to do something right. But we got it. Woo, woo, woo. You know it. Zack Ryder comes out. On NXT, he was on as Matt Cardona. He was TNA as Matt Cardona. It was, for whatever reason, this Matt Cardona from TNA who had been on the independent circuit had started trouble with Josh Briggs. But there was very little reference to Zack Ryder. There was very little reference to the years that he had spent in WWE before entering TNA and the independents. It was the opposite on SmackDown. It was Zack Ryder. Zack Ryder was back on SmackDown, the one that you remember. I was very happy to see that Zack Ryder got most of the match, meaning that his offense took up a huge chunk of the match. You have LA Knight, who has been in contention for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship for a better part of the year. This is a main event babyface guy. And Zack Ryder was in control most of the match. He looked really good throughout the match. Ultimately, at the end, it was just that BFT that was hit at the right place at the right time, and boom, 1, 2, 3, LA Knight wins. And I thought that's exactly how the match should have gone. It's kind of how I pitched it going. The idea being that LA Knight is one of the few guys, no matter how excited you get that Zack Ryder is back, LA Knight is one of the few guys that people love enough that they just want to see win. So he's not going to get any heat for beating the surprise. But realistically, if Zack Ryder's not going to win the whole tournament, why have him even win the first round? Why have him beat a guy like LA Knight? It doesn't really make any sense when instead you could have the pop when he comes out, the surprise, the internet chatter. You can have him look great during the match so he doesn't come across poorly. And then, and then move on with the tournament, and who knows what lies next for Zack Ryder. And I think that becomes the conversation. What comes next for Zack Ryder? And honestly, what's better? The idea that the John Cena tournament brings Zack Ryder a couple of rounds in, or entering the John Cena tournament brings the maybe Zack Ryder should come back full-time conversation up higher than it's been in many, many years. There was this, I saw a lot of people online thinking that they now want to see a Zack Ryder LA Knight tag team, which I would imagine that Broski would prefer to the Mojo Rawley tag team based on how he's discussed his time in the Hype Bros. But I think especially even with the rumors of SmackDown potentially returning to 3 hours in January, like the idea that you would have Zack Ryder as a superstar on the show, I don't see any downfall in that at all. Especially based on the fact that he delivered. He came out, he got a reaction, he looked great in the match. He still looks like a superstar. He's in better shape now than he was when he left WWE. It's kind of the most you could ask, especially because he's been gone for a long time. He's been gone for years. And at no point in all of those years did he lose any motivation. We had a video from him on the WWE's YouTube channel and socials after the show. You had Triple H posting the pointing photo with Zack Ryder, which is nuts. You had Broski t-shirts going back up on WWE Shop. The Zack Ryder shirts going back up on WWE Shop. It was huge. Now, they were the old Broski Zack Ryder shirts. So the question is out there, does he have a Legends deal? Did he sign a nostalgia deal where they can sell Zack Ryder merch and he'll do appearances or whatever? Or is Zack Ryder coming back to the WWE? I think both scenarios are great. I think there's an appetite for it. I think Zack Ryder coming back to the WWE becomes very, very complicated because of his outside interests. He's got his podcast that he does with Brian Myers. Which is a whole business into and of itself. He's got a toy company. They do the big rubber guys. That literally, Matt Cardona's toy company makes AEW big rubber guys. So there's a lot of complications there based on how entrepreneurial Matt Cardona has been since he left WWE. And I think that that's amazing. And I think WWE's got to look at that and say, hey, if this guy can make that much money for himself, maybe he can make some money for us too. But I really love the idea that he can make history in that way. Regardless, he's making history, right? Because now you realistically are going to see Zack Ryder toys. If you can make t-shirts, you can make toys. It's part of the deal, right? And the idea that like he can have his own company, Big Rubber Guys, but potentially also have a new generation WWE licensed LJN figure. You know what? Like that's cool. That's a cool thing. That shows you how wide this wrestling landscape can go and how nothing is one size fits all when it comes to a professional wrestling career. That guys can make careers on their own terms and do good work and work hard and work in a smart way. And who knows what things can look like going forward. You know, I think that there is, to me, so a couple of things. There were some that were like, well, why wouldn't you have Zack Ryder come back at Madison Square Garden? You know, that's where he was. Remember when The Rock came out at Survivor Series that year and they started chanting, "We want Ryder." That was Madison Square Garden. That's the arena. Why wouldn't you have? And I would imagine it's probably because, in my opinion, I think Joe Hendry is going to be Solo Sikoa's mystery opponent. And Joe Hendry's got a match at the theater at Madison Square Garden the night after Monday Night Raw for NXT Gold Rush. So I think that might just be as logistical as that. And by the way, Madison Square Garden's going to go nuts for Joe Hendry too. If that's who it is, it could be a million. It could be Mike Santana. We'll talk about all the different people that it could be. But it's really interesting to me. There were people online that weren't just, I can understand if you're watching and you go, well, I wish he had been Matt Cardona. And that's fine because maybe you're a fan of Matt Cardona. Maybe you've become a fan of Matt Cardona since his indie run, right? Maybe you become a fan of Matt Cardona since his TNA run. Like if you are a fan of Matt Cardona and you're like, well, and that's kind of the name I wanted to see him in WWE, I totally get it. But the criticism of it and the criticism of Matt Cardona for going as Zack Ryder is completely, I mean, I think it's a bad faith take, if that's the take. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. First of all, I think from a narrative standpoint, from a storytelling standpoint, and this is just me, this is just how I felt about it. When I saw it, right, and I saw Zack Ryder, and the Zack Ryder thing came on, he had the ZR tights, and he took that breath. There was almost a poetry to the idea that Zack Ryder was back in WWE, because Zack Ryder is the ultimate character that never got as much as some of us fans thought that he should get. We all remember the Broski of the Week era. Zack Ryder starts, he comes into WWE, and he's kind of a nondescript, major brother with Brian Myers. The first thing that really separates them is they become the Edge heads. They dress up like Edge, and they basically do the doink gimmick, except with Edge. And I thought that was brilliant. And then once that's over, it's kind of like, okay, I don't know who we are. Zack Ryder debuts this Broski character on the new ECW, the redesigned ECW. Cuts his hair short, spikes it, and for anybody that's on the East Coast, you know this Long Island bro from any night that you've ever been out, any Thursday or Friday night in a club in Long Island, you know exactly who this guy is. And he's got his mesh shirt on, and he's got his dumb Broski headband on and his spiked hair. At the time, he's wearing one-legged tights, which I get you're trying to stand out, but that was clearly a mistake. Maybe not a mistake, but over time, I'm glad he changed it. And, it's a fun character, and I think people are into the fun character, but that's all it is, right? It's never designed to go much further than being a fun character. And he ends up coming to the main roster, and doesn't do much. And all of a sudden, people are like, I'm not saying he should be the world champion right now, but I have fun when he's on screen. And as a performer, he's putting everything into this character. Why isn't it taking off more? Why aren't you doing more with Zack Ryder? Why is he only on main event, or even worse, just sitting in catering? Long periods of time go by where Zack Ryder's not on TV at all, doing anything. And all of a sudden he starts this YouTube show. And it's before anybody. It's before Being the Elite. It's before anybody. is doing YouTube shows like this, to the point where WWE probably didn't even have a rule about it because they didn't know what the rule would or should be. He starts Zack Ryder's The True Long Island Story. And he's making all these like references where he's trying to climb over a fence. Hey, Ryder, what are you doing? I'm trying to get over. You know what I mean? Like all these like inside references that really weren't happening at the time. Now that's commonplace. But then the idea of a YouTube show, the idea of like flirting with this inside vernacular, the idea of like, you know, still being silly and being in character, but also kind of shooting, you know what I mean? And using that sort of locker room talk for wrestling hadn't really been done before at all. And it got over big. And he would come to the ring with his flip cam. You know, they used to have those flip video cameras, which are a relic now. They were big for like a year. And now, I mean, nobody even remembers. There's like this video camera that a USB port would flip out on the other side of it so you could put it in your computer and upload the videos that you took, but it was very portable. And he would come to the ring with a flip cam. And it just, there was something about it that felt of the time, that felt relevant, that felt relatable in a way that maybe a lot of it wrestling hadn't been. But he still wasn't, I mean, it was like for us on the internet. He still, like, it didn't translate to television at all. It wasn't even acknowledged on television. Started calling himself the internet champion, had a belt made and everything. The belt looked amazing. They never showed the belt on television. But it was like a professional belt. They made the belt into a Mattel action figure, but it was never, and in the 2K games, but it was never actually on television. That's how big this internet show got. And, you know, you'd have these moments where you were chanting, and he won the U.S. title at one point. Never quite, you know, you had the big win, but that was kind of it. You know, you had your WrestleMania, what was that, 32, I want to say, moment in Dallas? Was that? Yeah, I think that was WrestleMania 32 when he won the ladder match, won the Intercontinental Championship. He and Brian Myers at WrestleMania 35, I think it was a pre-show match, won the Tag Team Championship in their home stadium there in Giant Stadium. But you'd have these moments, but it was never more than a moment. But fans stuck with him the entire way, to the point where, like, he became their guy regardless of what the storylines were on television, to the point where The Rock would cut this promo and you'd hear, "We want Ryder, we want Ryder." And they would start, and then they would stop, and then they would start, and then they would stop. But the idea that that character that we all kind of latched onto was released, didn't even leave on his own volition. We didn't have a choice in the matter as fans. The office sent him away. And then the person that portrayed that character makes himself bigger, makes himself better, makes himself stronger, makes himself more of a name, stays in the conversation for every minute that he's gone, and makes such an impact that once again, we as the fans have to be listened to. And Zack Ryder, the little engine that could, because Zack Ryder is the little engine that could, is back and is fighting LA Knight and is part of this John Cena tournament and is better than he ever was. There is something poetic about the idea of a Zack Ryder comeback. And so I enjoy that story. I enjoy that part of it. But I understand totally people that were like, well, I was never even into Zack Ryder. That was so long ago. I'm in to Matt Cardona. I get that too. But what I don't get is people going, "Oh, you said Zack Ryder was dead and you sold out for this." First of all, like, the idea, Zack Ryder is dead. I believe, and I'm putting words in Matt Cardona's mouth, but I believe that the Zack Ryder is dead thing was really only ever meant to be a display of the commitment that he had to what he was doing now. A display of the commitment that he had to independent wrestling, right? It was never about, I'm never going to do this character. I hate this character. I'm never going back. I'm never. It was, hey, I'm not here to talk about anything that's in the past. I'm here with you guys right now in this moment. And he worked the indies for years, and he changed the indies completely. And he created opportunity for person after person after person, not just in the sense that he brought eyeballs to independent shows, but he created a blueprint on how people could make money. He created an action figure company so people could make money on action figures. He created all this stuff. and created this blueprint and then told everybody exactly how and what and why he was doing. He didn't make any of it a secret. You want to do it? Do it too. This is exactly what it is. And he created this blueprint. And then when he got the call, he decided to go back. And I for the life of me, can't see. And then even if you want to call him a sellout, well, he's a sellout because he went back to being Zack Ryder. I mean, you got to listen to this guy. You got to listen to a word that he said. You know what? I mean, the honesty is my favorite part about doing radio with this guy, Matt Cardona, because he comes on, right? And I'll pay attention to what he's done on the indies over the weekend. A couple weeks ago, when he had like lost this match, and then he also lost to Killer Cross at House of Glory. Like he had lost like 3 matches in one weekend. And we were on the radio. I go, hey, broski, tough weekend for you this weekend, huh? And he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I left with a full fanny pack. He's never made this a secret. All he's talked about is the business that's behind this. He's putting on a show. But ultimately, this is a business. And for somebody that's this big of a super fan of pro wrestling, because that's what happens sometimes, right? The bigger the fan, the more difficult of a time you have understanding that this is a business and you have to go in with a business hat on. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. The fact that this big of a fan is able to understand the logistics of the fact that this is a business and then tell you, this is how I see it as a business, this is what I'm doing, and this is why, answers all your questions. The same guy who goes, yeah, WWE, if Zack Ryder is who you need, Zack Ryder is who will show up, is the same guy that's walking out with a full fanny pack of every city that he goes into and not making a secret about it. He's going to deliver value. He's not scamming anybody. But he's saying, if you'd like to pay for a product, I'd like to supply you with that product. And it's going to be the greatest product you could imagine. And you'll pay me for the product. And that's the relationship. And I think that that's the way it should be. That's a beautiful thing. So any idea, and this is like, I mean, the idea that as a fan, you'd be disappointed that you don't get to see your favorite independent wrestler, Matt Cardona, on the TV, that is totally justified, and I respect it. But the idea that as somebody that loves wrestling enough that you have a public opinion on wrestling and you try to make it seem like this is negative in any way, shape, or form, instead of going, hey, one of the good guys just won. One of us just won. You gotta go outside. You gotta do something else. You're too into it. You're too looking for something to complain, and this isn't doing it for you anymore. And if it's not doing it for you anymore, you gotta go outside and reassess. And maybe start commenting on something else, or maybe refine that your passion for this thing. Because the difference between criticizing and being miserable is a fine line, but one that we have to observe. Criticizing is totally valid. Being miserable is not valid. And actually makes the criticisms invalid if that's why you're doing it. Guys, we'll get right back to it, but one of the worst feelings in the world is when you realize that you have fallen for a scam. It's like somebody has invaded you. It's not just the money that's gone, it's that feeling of not knowing what's real anymore. When you get the Cash App card, not only do you get access to a ton of perks and benefits like exclusive early access to nationwide concert pre-sales or discounts on popular brands, but you also have extra security with the power to instantly lock or unlock your card right from your phone in just one tap. If a suspicious transaction pops up on your card, Cash App has your back by automatically declining the purchase. You can rest assured knowing that your account balance is protected 24/7 by fraud monitoring. This is all thanks to Cash App and the Cash App card. For a limited time, new Cash App customers can earn $10 if they use code SECURE10 in their profile at sign up and send $5 to a friend within 14 days. Terms apply. Cash App is a financial services platform, not a bank. Banking services provided by Cash App's bank partners. Prepaid debit cards issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC. Discounts and promotions provided by Cash App, a Block Inc. brand. Visit cash.app/legal/podcast for full disclosures. So, like I said, I think that it'll be Joe Hendry at Madison Square Garden on Monday Night Raw. That's my pick. That's my thought. In the John Cena tournament, we had Sheamus beat Shinsuke Nakamura. We had LA Knight beat Zack Ryder. We had Rusev beat Damian Priest. Now, we don't know where these names are seated, so we don't know exactly who's going to fall where in the next round, in the round of 8 in the tournament, which we'll get to after this week. And then we had Jey Uso beat The Miz clean, which was a surprise to me. I thought that The Miz would continue on. So it's Jey Uso, Rusev, and we'll talk about Miz in a minute. Jey Uso, Rusev, Sheamus, and LA Knight are the first 4 moving on to the next round. Then in Madison Square Garden, we'll have Javon Evans versus Gunther. I think that this is going to be an incredible match. I think this is going to be one of those matches that puts Javon Evans on a pedestal. I think this is going to be one of those opportunities that John Cena talks about getting early in his career, where we go back and tell the Javon Evans story and go, man, showing up into Madison Square Garden proper and having that match that he had with Gunther, that was the moment for Javon Evans. However, Gunther's going to break your heart. It's why Gunther exists. Gunther is going to break your heart. You are going to see everything from Javon Evans. If you're not already a believer, you are going to be made a believer out of. And then Gunther is going to break your heart and beat Javon Evans. I am steadfast on this. I am not changing my opinion. Gunther is my pick to win the tournament. He is going to break your heart. Just accept it and enjoy the ride. Sorry. And by the way, that's one of those instances where it's like, if you criticize that, I'm totally fine with it. He's a bad guy. But I think he's going to beat Javon Evans. You got Solo versus a mystery opponent on Raw. I think the mystery opponent is Joe Hendry. I think Solo beats Joe Hendry. I think Solo has to beat Joe Hendry. I think we have to reestablish these MFTs as a dominant force. I think we have to get to a point where the audience takes them seriously. I think it's crucial. And I think Solo beats Joe Hendry. And then, who knows, maybe in the next round you get Solo versus Jey Uso. That could be a lot of fun. You could get Gunther versus LA Knight. You could there are a million different ways you could go. Gunther versus Sheamus in the next round would be a lot of fun. But I do think Solo has to beat Joe Hendry. And I think there's a lot of happiness that can happen on Raw. I just don't think it's going to happen in those 2 tournament matches. On SmackDown this week, you have Bronson Reed versus Carmelo Hayes, which I'd love to see Carmelo Hayes win, but something that I'm noticing in these tournament matches is we're not getting the interference. We're not getting schmozzy finishes. We're not getting that stuff. Jay beat Miz clean. I thought Miz would win with chicanery. Rusev beat Damian Priest clean. I mean, he got the eye poke in there, but it's not like Aleister Black came out and helped Rusev beat Damian Priest. Sheamus beat Shinsuke clean. All these victories are clean. I do think Bronson Reed is going to advance in the tournament. I think we're going to have to figure out later how to get Jey Uso out, how to get Bronson Reed out. But I think, I might have Gunther face Sheamus in the second round and Jey Uso in the third round. That could be really, really interesting. But, I think Bronson Reed beats Carmelo Hayes. And then Penta and Finn Balor, I think is going to be unbelievable. I think I got to give it to Penta beating Finn Balor. I think that it would be better for Penta to win. I think people want to see it. I think as much as I'm ready for Finn Balor to have his next arc and Finn Balor to get his next push as a singles guy, I think that that's going to come right alongside the babyface turn of Dominic Mysterio. I think that that is on the horizon, but I think in the immediate, Penta goes on to the next round. So that means that my round of 8 will be Jey Uso, Rusev, Sheamus, LA Knight, Gunther, Solo Sikoa, Bronson Reed, and Penta. I think that. So okay, so let's do this right now. Okay, so if I've got Jey, Rusev, Sheamus, LA Knight, Solo, Reed, and Penta, then I'm probably going to do Jey and Reed. I'm probably going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I'm probably going to do Sheamus and Gunther. I'm probably going to do maybe Rusev and Penta, and then Solo and LA Knight. And then I'm going to do Jay over Reed, Gunther over Sheamus. And I am going to do Rusev over Penta, LA Knight over Solo. Then I'm going to do Gunther over Jay, LA Knight over Rusev, and then Gunther over LA Knight. Okay, so now it's on record. That's where I would put them all. Jay beats Bronson Reed, Gunther beats Sheamus, Rusev beats Penta, LA Knight beats Solo Sikoa. Our final four are Jey Uso, Gunther, Rusev, and LA Knight. LA Knight beats Rusev, Gunther beats Jey Uso. What you've done here is you've had Gunther do a heartbreak in every round because we kind of want Sheamus to face John Cena. Then, Jey Uso is a perennial good guy. And also Jey Uso being against Bronson Reed, you're not going to get, a whole bunch of YouTube dislikes if Jey Uso beats Bronson Reed. Rusev going all the way to the final four, I think is that big push for Rusev, which I think is strong for Rusev right now. And then LA Knight, LA Knight's just a great opponent for Rusev. And with Rusev being pushed that far, I think you're going to be wondering, is Rusev going to beat LA Knight? No. Now LA Knight makes it all the way to the finals, which is a nice rep for LA Knight, but Gunther breaks his heart. And if your final is Gunther and LA Knight, people will be saying, oh my God, can you imagine how great this is going to be? Imagine if it's LA Knight versus John Cena. That's perfect. And then it's not. You know what I mean? And then it's just not. It's Gunther versus John Cena. So before we move on from John, so that's my pick. That's the way I have the tournament going right now. I might have to redo this next week, but that's where I have the tournament going right now. Before we move on from Cena, he's got an opponent coming at Madison Square Garden. By the time you're listening to or watching this, we may already know. We may have already seen Monday Night Raw. But the only person that I can think of is the Miz. Unless it's somebody, Mike Santana's going to show up, which I don't think so. Unless it's somebody from NXT, like a Trick Williams, I could maybe Trick Williams showing up. But I feel like The Miz is probably the person whose name I hear the most when people go, he didn't get a John Cena match. And you could do a Dominic Mysterio rematch, but I doubt that they're going to do the same match on 2 Raws in a row. And Finn Balor's in the tournament. So it's like, who's he going to defend the Intercontinental title against? I think The Miz coming out and saying, look, the best thing ever would be if Chris Jericho came out. Because when John Cena debuted on Raw in 2005, he debuted on the Chris Jericho show. The highlight reel. Chris Jericho came out in 2005, and it was almost to the day 3 years after John Cena had debuted on SmackDown in 2002. It was June of 2005. And he goes, we're about to find out in the draft lottery who we're getting from SmackDown. And then John Cena interrupts Chris Jericho and shows up with the Spirit of St. Louis jersey on. And so the idea that John Cena would be confronted by Jericho on his first and last Monday Night Raw would be the greatest thing in the world. However, contracts are contracts. I have no idea what the status is. I'm not sure that can happen. If that can't happen, The Miz might be the pick. Now, logically and pragmatically, The Miz getting to wrestle John Cena draws into question the John Cena tournament, because it's like, if you are at the place where it's like The Miz gets to wrestle John Cena on his last Raw, then Miz lost the tournament. Miz lost in the first round of the tournament. So the prize of the tournament is a match with John Cena. It is the last match, so it's obviously a more valuable match. But still, if the prize in the tournament is the last match with John Cena, and you lose the tournament in the first round, and you still get a match with John Cena on his last night on Monday Night Raw, it feels like, to me, everybody in the tournament should not be allowed to get a match with John Cena. However, that's the very sort of logical side of my brain. Realistically, if The Miz came out and we see John Cena and The Miz staring down one more time, does anybody care that The Miz lost the tournament? I kind of think no. Does Madison Square Garden care that The Miz lost? I don't really think so. Unless you're going to do something with like Braun Breaker or something like that, I kind of feel like The Miz is the way to go, but we'll see. We'll talk about it for sure. We'll have a lot to say. Speaking of a lot to say, a lot of people had a lot to say about TNA this weekend. The Thursday night Impact, which was the first Impact show coming off of Bound for Glory. And, of course, the Turning Point, live Turning Point show that was on the TNA app. I watched both. And, so here's what happened. Mike Santana has this great moment at Bound for Glory. The only thing that I didn't like about the Bound for Glory moment was they did a fake out with the potential cash in of Nick Nemeth and Frankie Kazarian. Kazarian and Nemeth tied in the trophy match, so they both have a shot at the champion at any given moment, and that's key to this story, right? So then TNA takes off. They don't have any tapings between Bound for Glory and this week's Impact show, which is fine. None of the the only thing I have an issue with is the fact that Mike Santana is not the champion. Everything else is granular. We can get into whether it's our preference or not, but there's nothing inherently good or bad. Like it's just a preference, right? So Mike Santana comes out as the TNA champion, something that fans have been waiting for months and months and months and months. Finally, Mike Santana is the guy. We believe in Mike Santana. We believe in Joe Hendry as well, but Joe Hendry's in NXT, I guess. We believe in Mike Santana. Mike Santana comes out, finds out his first challenger is going to be Ryan Nemeth. Fine, it's a TV match. I don't have a problem with it. Mike Santana beats Ryan Nemeth, as he should, right? Then this group, which I am calling the NXTWO, come out and beat down everybody, beat down all the TNA guys. It's Robert Stone, it's Lexus King, it's a bunch of guys. There's some of the Evolve guys. It's a bunch of guys from NXT. And they come out and they beat up everybody. And Mike Santana is left laying, at which point Frankie Kazarian cashes in. And on his first night as defending champion of TNA, Frankie Kazarian beats Mike Santana. And now Frankie Kazarian is the TNA champion. The next night, and then rumors start spreading that Mike Santana, the next day, they say Mike Santana left early. They say nobody's talked to Mike Santana. They say Mike Santana didn't show up for the autograph signing before Turning Point. They say Mike Santana's not in the building for Turning Point. But there were also people going I think they're working the dirts a little bit. You know what I mean? They're getting the dirt sheets to write this. But this, it's part of the story. Turning Point match is happening. It's supposed to be Steve Maclin and Mike Santana versus Frankie Kazarian and Nick Nemeth. No Mike Santana to be found. Steve Maclin is doing the match by himself. All of a sudden, a truck pulls up outside the building in the middle of the match. Here comes Mike Santana. He's decided to show up, goes through the crowd, beats everybody up, wins the match, leaves Frankie Kazarian laying. Mike Santana is angry, but he and Steve Maclin win the match. Now Nick Nemeth sees, oh my God, Frankie Kazarian, the TNA champion, is left laying. I've got a cash-in attempt that I can go for too. Goes for the trophy before he can cash it in, argues with the referee a little bit, and as they're arguing, here come the NXTWO, and the NXTWO once again leave everybody laying. Ava says this wasn't her doing. Obviously, we've been looking for an invasion for a while, but here's my thing about, and I don't even mind the invasion. I think the invasion story is good. I think it spices things up. I think it's good. My problem with TNA is that they love heat. They just love getting heat on people. And to me, and this is just my preference in wrestling, I think that the best thing that you can have as a wrestling promotion is a strong babyface. I mean, when you look at wrestling on a big level, especially in the modern era, and I know you go back and some of these territories were built on heels, right? Like Crockett, you had a lot more time with Dusty chasing Flair than you did with Dusty as champion. And that's true. But is it better? Would it not have been better? Would it not have drawn if Dusty just got to sit as champion for a long time? I'm not going to go like back in time. Nick Bockwinkel, of course, was a heel AWA champion for a long time. I get it. But for me, my preference, and maybe it was because I was raised on WWF, I think the best thing that a wrestling company can have is a strong babyface. And let's go back 30 years, okay? You can go into the territories and you can find times that that it's been a heel territory and it's worked. And that's 100% relevant and accurate in the whole thing. But WWF changed wrestling forever by having Hulk Hogan on top and keeping him on top. And before that, Bob Backlund was on top. And Bruno Sammartino was on top. And Pedro Morales. I mean, you know what I mean? You'd have these baby faces that would just stay on top for years and years and years. And fans would just keep coming to see these baby faces because fans still loved the baby faces. I mean, even to this day, right? You go past that and, you know, the new generation is tough. Diesel is your baby face on top. Got to find the next. Shawn's the baby face on top. But, you know, when it got hot again, it was because Austin and Rock were on top. And Austin and Rock it was most successful, and Austin and Rock were both on top as, you know, they were baby faces, not in the traditional sense, but they were anti-hero baby faces. John Cena was on top. The only reason WWE stayed afloat when things creatively weren't the best is because they had John Cena as a top baby face on top for like the whole time. Even when there was another champion, John Cena was still your guy. Then you go into the modern era, and it's like you did have this period of time, and that's fair, that Roman Reigns was a heel who was on top, and he was beating everybody. But Roman Reigns, to say Roman Reigns is an outlier is, I mean, the understatement of the year. Roman Reigns is a once in a 10 generations story that doesn't work elsewhere, in my opinion. You know, Roman Reigns is just different. Paul Heyman was on Stephanie McMahon's podcast this last week, and it was brilliant. I loved every second. It's like 2.5 hours long. I listened to every single minute of it. I'll probably listen to it again. But one of the great quotes in that is Paul Heyman saying that the bloodline was as impactful on pro wrestling as ECW was, which is massive. But realistically, how do you get out of the bloodline? You have Cody Rhodes on top. Cody Rhodes is your babyface. You keep him on top. You go to ECW. Ultimately, what was the fire that kept ECW afloat? Tommy Dreamer, the consistent babyface that was on top. He got beat a lot, but he was on top. He was the guy. You know? And even when it wasn't, you know, Tommy Dreamer, it was still like Taz was kind of a babyface when he was ECW champion. People liked going to see Taz and they cheered for Taz. You go to WCW. When the NWO, who I guess they were heels on top, but really they were baby faces. Everybody was going to see the NWO. Everybody loved the NWO. And when the NWO ran out of steam, the only way WCW stayed on top was Goldberg. And he was a babyface. You know? And so for me, it's like when you don't always have that babyface that's going to be able to resonate like that. And sometimes you do have a heel that just resonates more and you just put it on the heel. And that's fine. But for some reason in TNA, they just love not really pulling the trigger on the babyface. They did it. Joe Hendry was the beginning of it. Joe Hendry should have been TNA champion in 24. Joe Hendry should have been TNA champion last year. There were a couple of pay-per-views that he should have won the title on, and he didn't. And they pushed it, and they pushed it, and then he finally won it. But then by the time that he finally won it, like it was only a couple months, and granted, he got to walk into WrestleMania as TNA champion, and that's massive, and that's a great thing. And so I am glad that they put the TNA championship on Joe Hendry. But they could have had the title on him a lot longer, months longer. And then Mike Santana gets over, though. And all of a sudden, Mike Santana's over, and you're like, no, this is it. I didn't mind when Trick Williams beat Joe Hendry for the title the first time. It was when Trick Williams retained the title that I minded, because they did it again. Mike Santana should have won the TNA championship in New York. Mike Santana should have won the TNA championship at Slammiversary. It was billed as the biggest TNA show ever. It was in Mike Santana's hometown. Somehow Mike Santana had gotten more over to the TNA audience than even Joe Hendry. Everybody was happy to see Joe Hendry, but everybody wanted to see Mike Santana win that title, and then he didn't. You know, and then they finally give it to him at Bound for Glory, which was a great moment, and then you lose it again. They instantly take it off him, and it's like, you know, I get that in order to have a strong babyface, you need to have strong heels, and you need to have that babyface be able to beat the strong heels. But at a point, I don't know, man. At a point, especially when people don't believe in the heels like they believe in the babyface, right? Because when Tommy Dreamer was the babyface of ECW, people also believed in those heels. People believed in Raven. People loved Raven as a heel. So it kind of worked. But when it's like, no, the audience is saying, this is our person, this is what we want, just put it on the babyface. When you have a babyface that is over the way Joe Hendry was over, the way Mike Santana is over, you just leave it on Joe Hendry. And I'm all for Frankie Kazarian getting a run with the TNA championship. I think that's a good thing. But realistically, you got Mike Santana in this rare air place, and I just don't know why this quickly you would do that. I mean, I don't think he's injured because he wrestled the next night, unless he's going to be on WWE tomorrow. And I would think that you'd go, hey, why don't you let it? And even if that was the case, if he had the option of being on WWE tomorrow, then put the title on him earlier so you get a run out of it before you do this. Guys, we're going to get right back to it. But life's been a little crazy lately. And one thing that helps people unwind, well, it's Cornbread Hemp's CBD gummies. They only use the best part of the hemp plant, the flower, for the purest and most potent CBD, formulated to help relieve discomfort, stress, and sleeplessness. All products are third-party lab tested and USDA organic to ensure safety and purity. Right now, Notsam Wrestling listeners can save 30% on their first order. Just head to cornbreadhemp.com/notsam and use code NOTSAM at checkout. That's cornbreadhemp.com/notsam and use code NOTSAM. You know, because I think at a point when you give fans what they want and then immediately take it away a couple of times, there's only so much. It's not really a bait and switch, but it does start to feel exhausting as a fan. That's the only thing. We got further clarification on the men's War Games match. So on SmackDown, I thought when Paul Heyman showed up and said that he could have access to any superstar, told Nick Aldis, I can choose any superstar from any brand. It says right here on the paper. And Nick Aldis said, yeah, you didn't need to come to Albany just to say that. You knew Drew. I knew Drew. I think most people were like, okay, Drew's on the team. Drew is on the team. And earlier in the night, Jimmy Uso joined the babyface team. So now you had Cody Rhodes, CM Punk, Jimmy Uso, and Jey Uso versus Logan Paul, Bronson Reed, and Braun Breaker. And then once Paul Heyman said that, I go, okay, we're getting Drew McIntyre at the end of this show. Especially they make Bronson Reed versus Cody Rhodes the main event of SmackDown. I go, okay, we get the Drew McIntyre run. And that's great. And it works. And now you're going to have Drew McIntyre, I would hope, on Monday Night Raw alongside the team. The only thing that I had wished for was that Jacob Fatu was not, on the DL, the disabled list, I should say. That Jacob Fatu was healthy and was on the active roster, because I would have loved to have Jacob Fatu in the match. Not to say I don't want to see Jimmy Uso in the match, but I think that, I don't know, there's a dynamic with Jimmy Uso that I think could have been explored had he been left off the team. And also, I just want to see Jacob Fatu in that War Games match on the babyface team. I think it'd be great. And it makes sense because of the rivalry with Drew McIntyre, but that's okay. Jimmy Uso, Jey Uso, CM Punk, and Cody Rhodes is amazing. Amazing. I mean, you're looking at the most star-studded babyface team maybe ever in War Games. In modern War Games. I'm not going back to the Horseman era. I'm talking about WWE modern War Games. I think that what's interesting is, so for me, I think you are going to 5-on-5. I feel like, and again, at the time of this recording, maybe it's already happened, I think we're going to see Brock Lesnar on Raw with the Vision. And I think we're going to see Roman Reigns as the response to that on Raw. I think on Monday Night Raw, we're getting the 2 Cena tournament matches. I think we're going to get a John Cena match. I think we're going to get Roman and Brock back. I think we might get AJ Lee back on the women's team. I think all that could potentially happen in Madison Square Garden on Monday, which would just be the best. But yeah, so I think ultimately that's what the babyface team looks like, is Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, CM Punk, Jey Uso, and Jimmy Uso, which is just a sick, sick team. But when you think about it, Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, CM Punk, Jey Uso, and Jimmy Uso, if that is the team, and by the way, this theory still works if Roman Reigns is not on the team. But a team that was started by CM Punk is really Jey Uso's team. This team was started by CM Punk, and Jey Uso said, yeah, I got your back, Punk. And then they started adding people to it, but it's Jey Uso's team. Is Cody Rhodes friends with CM Punk or Jey Uso? The answer is Jey Uso. Is Jimmy Uso the brother of CM Punk or Jey Uso? The answer is Jey Uso. If Roman Reigns joins the team, is he cousins with CM Punk or is he cousins with Jey Uso? The answer is Jey Uso. He hates CM Punk. Roman Reigns has made that clear. Roman Reigns hates CM Punk. From going back a year ago at the last War Games match, he hates CM Punk. He blames CM Punk for losing the wise man. He has said that. However, if he joins the team, he'll be doing it for Jey, for Jimmy. And he does have that sort of love-hate with Cody because Cody's the one guy that took the title from Roman Reigns. What I think is interesting about that is Paul Heyman last week on Raw said, Punk, you have no friends. You are not a threat because you have no friends. And then Punk assembled his War Games team, but they're not his friends. They're Jey Uso's friends and family. So what happens now is you've got this scenario where coming out of War Games, because that's what really fascinates me. Can you create stories coming out of War Games? I think here's what you can create coming out of War Games. If you have Brock Lesnar in that War Games match, I think you can create a tension between Braun Breaker and Brock Lesnar. I would love to see Braun Breaker versus Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. I think that can start in War Games. You can create whatever is next between The Vision and CM Punk. Because I think you can have the heels win this match. I think The Vision can win this match. And Paul Heyman can point out that, Punk, those weren't your friends. Those were Jay's friends and family, not yours. You have no friends. And we're going to terrorize you now. And who knows, maybe Seth has to come back and side with Punk at some point. I mean, that could be very, very interesting. But I think the Punk not having friends furthers that Vision story. And finally, and maybe most importantly, I think that the tension that you had between Roman Reigns and CM Punk, if you have Roman Reigns on this War Games team, I think that the tension that you had between Roman Reigns and CM Punk last year at War Games is multiplied by 5 this year at War Games. And I think that this year at War Games is where you lead to the WrestleMania main event. This year at War Games is where you further the story that was started last year at War Games. So it goes from War Games last year and the build to it. Paul Heyman says CM Punk's going to join the team. Roman Reigns isn't happy about it, but fine. We go to WrestleMania. CM Punk cashes in the favor that Paul Heyman offered him for War Games, saying, you have to be by my side at WrestleMania in the triple threat. That was the ultimate betrayal. That's when Roman Reigns saw himself losing the wise man. We get to this year at War Games. Tension has only built between Roman Reigns and CM Punk. And then you can get to WrestleMania. Roman Reigns wins the Rumble. If Roman Reigns wins the Rumble and Cody Rhodes and CM Punk are both champions, that's going to be great because you can almost always know exactly who the winner of the Royal Rumble is going to choose. You knew Jey Uso was choosing Gunther when he won the Royal Rumble. You knew that. Roman Reigns looking at CM Punk and Cody. I think Roman Reigns should win the. I think Roman Reigns should lose. His team should lose War Games, and 2026 should be the year that Roman Reigns as that dominant force finally returns. I think Roman Reigns should win the Royal Rumble. I think Roman Reigns should be staring down the barrel of both Cody Rhodes and CM Punk. I think Roman Reigns' brain should want to take his title back from Cody Rhodes. But Roman Reigns' heart is full of hatred towards CM Punk. And so he goes for Punk. And the main event of WrestleMania becomes Roman Reigns versus CM Punk. Roman fighting for the World Heavyweight title. Because then you have potentially Seth Rollins on the horizon. But if it's CM Punk versus Roman Reigns, and you know that Seth is coming back for his title, who is Seth coming for, CM Punk or Roman Reigns? Either or. You can't call it. Who knows by that? But who knows? Those are his two biggest rivals. You can't call WrestleMania based on knowing Seth Rollins is around the corner. I just think, and I don't think there should be a triple threat. I don't think Seth should be added in. I don't keep him out of, even if Seth gets healthy the week before WrestleMania, even if Seth gets healthy 3 weeks before WrestleMania, Seth's journey begins the Monday after WrestleMania, I think. But that's where I think War Games leads. We've also got, and by the way, speaking of cage matches, I want to say that Blood and Guts was fabulous last week. that both the men's and the women's blood and guts matches on Dynamite were awesome. I think the women's did it for me. That was match of the night on the blood and guts show that AEW did. I thought they stole the show. I love that. I love when you can add like fun stuff in with very, very violent stuff, which is what they did in Blood and Guts. I love the idea of, I mean, maybe my favorite spot of the night, the one I keep thinking about, is just Mercedes handing out championships, handing out her belts to each member of her team so they can all hit the opposing team with belts. It's just brilliant. It's just genius. I just love utilizing that. I loved the brass knuckles under the puppet. I would have loved even more puppet play, but the idea that we remove the silliness and then Harley Cameron is ready to get violent with the brass knuckles under the puppet, I love that. I thought it was a breakout performance for Sky Blue. I thought all the women involved just did a tremendous, tremendous job. I thought it was breakout for Sky Blue. I thought it was breakout for Tekla, but you know I love Tekla. I thought Jamie Hayter rose to the occasion. I thought Jamie Hayter was great, but we all knew she was going to be great. Harley Cameron. I thought Harley Cameron rose to the occasion. And I thought Willow Nightingale was a star. Willow Nightingale, I feel like, keeps raising her stock and raising her stock and raising her stock. So I thought that was awesome. I thought the men's blood and guts was also really, really good. I thought it was really a fun twist that Mox, brutal king that he is, was able to use a weapon that was a shard of glass from the mirror of the first match of the night. The idea that the first match of the night, there was still stuff laying around. And so Mox was able to take advantage of that, follows up on the fact that we've already had one of those matches and that it does change the dynamic of the second match when the first match has already been held that night. I thought it was insane when Pac powerbombed Darby Allin through the flaming tables. And Darby stayed on fire. Ridiculous. Surprised that Mox tapped out. I think Mox has to be done. Mox has to be done. You know, the Death Riders have to throw Mox out. And I think you could make Pac the new leader of the Death Riders. I would love it if Gabe Kidd was in AEW full-time and Gabe Kidd could be the leader of the Death Riders. But I think Pac as the leader of the Death Riders could be interesting, could be different enough. And I do think the idea of Jon Moxley as a babyface against the Death Riders is compelling because I think it would remind everybody how much they love Jon Moxley, before all this. Jon Moxley was one of the most beloved wrestlers in AEW. I mean, in an odd way, he was almost their Hogan for a period of time. So I think reminding people how much they love Jon Moxley would be a good journey to go on with this new Death Riders thing. And I think that it helps that the foundation for it is him tapping out to Kyle O'Reilly, him putting Darby Allin over, him, you know what I mean? Like him putting Adam Page over, like Adam Page, Darby Allin, Kyle O'Reilly. These are like beloved guys that don't always get that opportunity. So the fact that that's what he's done, I think will add to the foundation of Mox when he's a babyface. Before we get to emails, we've got the return of the 5-on-5 Survivor Series tag match, but it's happening at the SmackDown. I think it's happening at the SmackDown before Survivor Series. It might be happening next week, but I think it's the SmackDown before Survivor Series is when it's going to happen. I think. It's the MFTs versus Sami Zayn, Shinsuke Nakamura, Rey Fenix, and the Motor City Machine Guns. By the way, as this match was made, Uncle Howdy is looking on. So obviously, there is this chance that the Wyatts interfere and cost. But man, I mean, I think, as I said when I was talking about the tournament, the reason I want Solo Sikoa to beat Joe Hendry is I want the MFTs to come across as a threat. And I think that that's missing from them right now. Like a real threat. Like that they are going to beat people. I honestly, Sami Zayn, Shinsuke Nakamura, Rey Fenix, Motor City Machine Guns, literally 5 of the best professional wrestlers in the world. 5 just solidified babyface dudes. Not only do I want the MFTs to win this match, I want 0 MFTs to be eliminated. I want all 5 MFTs to survive this match. I want them to eliminate the entire team. I want them to look absolutely dominant in this match. And then I want the Wyatt 6 to maybe come out at the after, and the Wyatt 6 to come after the MFTs. But I want the realization to not be the MF. Right now, I think that some fans feel like the MFTs are there to be fed to the Wyatt 6. And I don't think that that's the right way to look at it. And I don't think that they are. I think the idea that if we see Solo on Raw beat Joe Hendry, and then a week later on this, or a week and a half later, SmackDown before Survivor Series, you see the MFTs just lay out the entire team of 5 of your top baby faces, then I think you've got a scenario where it's like, no, the MFTs beat people, and we can actually have a conversation about the MFTs maybe beating the Wyatt Six as well. I just think that, like, I don't know. I like the MFTs. I just think it's a matter of making people believe that they can destroy everybody. You know, and in order to make people, the way you make people believe that the MFTs can destroy everybody is have them start destroying people. That's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see all 5 guys be sole survivors. And I say that ironically because anybody that has ever pluralized the term sole survivor, they're 100% grammatically incorrect and, I mean, insanely wrong. Soul means one word. And you would see that, right? Going back to Survivor Series, because I love those Survivor Series matches. You know, and they've gone off and on. So, like, the first, what did Survivor Series start around 88, 89, something like that? 88, I want to say? Maybe 87? I don't know. But up until 92, it was only Survivor Series matches that you saw. And, like, at some point, like, a sole survivor means one person survived the match. At some point, they started announcing multiple sole survivors, and it would drive me crazy. It's like in the movie Airheads, the whole joke is that the band calls themselves the Lone Rangers. Well, there's 3 of you. How can you all be the Lone Rangers? It's impossible. You're not lone. You're not a sole survivor. It's S-O-L-E. It's not S-O-U-L. That doesn't mean anything. S-O-L-E, soul, one, individual, survivor. There can't be multiple sole survivors. It's insane. So, but they would announce it that way at some of these Survivor Series. Your winners and sole survivors. What are you talking about? Survivors, not sole survivors. But I remember loving these Survivor Series matches, right? Even 1990, when they had like all the baby faces face all the heels at the end. I remember in 92, like really being thrown for a loop. In 92, that's when they stopped the Survivor Series matches. That's the first time that, well, 91, it was a big deal. Because in Survivor Series 1990, Undertaker debuts as a heel on the $1 Million team against Dusty Rhodes' team. 1 year later, at Survivor Series 91, Undertaker is getting a world title shot. It's the first time there's been a singles match on a Survivor Series pay-per-view. It's Hulk Hogan versus The Undertaker. It's the gravest challenge. And 1 year into his time in the WWE, Undertaker beats Hulk Hogan. Now, he does it with the help of a steel chair that Ric Flair provided, but he beats Hulk Hogan. And this is not something that had been done. I mean, think about it. Up until that point, Hulk Hogan, the title that The Undertaker won, Hulk Hogan had won that title at WrestleMania 7 against Sergeant Slaughter. So, but the only guy that had beaten Hulk Hogan before The Undertaker, Ultimate Warrior, had beaten him at WrestleMania 6, right? So it was Warrior. And then before that, leading up to WrestleMania 4, technically Andre beat him, but it was a fake referee, right? So Hogan never lost. It was a big deal when he lost to the Warrior. And so to have him lose to The Undertaker at all was like unheard of. And then, of course, the title gets declared vacant. We go to Tuesday in Texas. We go to Royal Rumble. Flair wins the belt. We go to WrestleMania 8, the whole thing. But the gravest challenge was a big deal. Not only because it was Undertaker versus Hogan, and Undertaker was a relatively new guy, not only because Hogan lost, but because it was the first singles match on a Survivor Series show. And then the next year at Survivor Series 92, it was like, I think they had like one Survivor Series match, and it wasn't even full elimination. It was tag team elimination. So like you pin one guy and both guys leave. It was like whatever it was. The 2 babyface teams versus 2 heel teams. I think Nasty Boys and Natural Disaster. I think it was like Beverly Brothers and Natural Disasters versus Nasty Boys and one other team. I think that was 92. But the other matches were like all stip matches, right? You had a tag match, which was big, which was Macho and Mr. Perfect, returning Mr. Perfect versus Flair and Razor, although it was supposed to be Macho and Warrior, except Warrior was gone. Then the main event was Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels, because Bret had just won the title from Flair at a house show. It was a whole cavalcade. But then you had stip matches. You had like a coffin match for the first time. between Undertaker and Kamala, first WWE coffin match. You had a nightstick match, first WWE nightstick match between Big Boss Man and Nails. You had Yokozuna's debut at that show, Yokozuna versus Virgil. His pay-per-view debut. He debuted on television, but his first pay-per-view match, Yokozuna versus Virgil. So it's a big show, but completely taken out of the tradition of what Survivor Series was. Then in like 93, they brought Survivor Series matches back. 94, they brought Survivor Series matches back. And then even up until 96, they still had some Survivor Series matches. They had like a couple, it was like a mixed bag, right? Survivor Series 96 is when they had like Austin and Brett, Undertaker and Mankind singles matches. Main event was Shawn and Sid singles match. But then you also had like, the elimination match that had like Goldust team with Jerry Lawler versus the babyface team that Rocky Maivia was on and the stalker Barry Windham was on. Yeah, and then you had Flash Funk in another elimination Survivor Series match. And then by 97, which was Gang Rules, I don't even remember. Because like 97, 98 is when you start. And then you still get them mixed in here and there. But the tradition really is like up until 92 and then back for like 93, 94, 95 is really that Survivor Series. And I guess I went off on a tangent there, but I love Survivor Series matches. Maybe it was because I grew up at the right time, but I love a Survivor Series match, so I'm excited they're back in any way, shape, or form. I'd love to know what you think. You can email in notsamwrestling@gmail.com. Notsamwrestling@gmail.com is our email address to talk about any of this or anything else that is on your mind. Notsamwrestling@gmail.com. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on all audio feeds. Leave comments, leave reviews. It really helps us. Subscribe to youtube.com/notsamwrestling. Leave comments there. Hit subscribe, hit like, do all that stuff. It really helps. And on the podcast apps, hit 5 stars, like leave a little review and everything. All that stuff really, really helps. And by the way, on the SiriusXM app, if you're a Sirius subscriber, you can now get every podcast that I do. So you can get the 2 radio shows that I do and the 3 podcasts that I do. All the audio is now on my host page on the SiriusXM app. Let's go to Toby. He says, Sam, I watch all the shows and can confirm that there is indeed not enough Sam. That is huge, Toby. I appreciate that. But it's been killing me to know when you roll out of bed on a Tuesday morning, are you more excited for the Broski breakdown or it being Toots Day? Well, I don't know. There's a lot of... There are multiple Sams that live in my head. That's how you do it. Your brain has to be segmented into multiple Sams. Okay? There are a few different Sams that we all kind of join together. And then I send out the different Sams to handle Broski Breakdown, to handle the morning show, to handle, Megan Morant. That takes a whole Sam in and of itself. Let's go to Clyde, who writes in, hope all is well. It's been just a week since Eddie left this world unexpectedly 20 years ago. Can you reflect on where you were at the time and reflect on your thoughts on hearing the news? Also, your favorite memory of Eddie as a performer and what rivalries would you have loved to see him in? Oh, okay. That's a very interesting question. So, I was thinking about this a lot. It was last week, 20 years ago, that we lost Eddie Guerrero, which is like unfathomable to realize that he would only be in his mid-50s. Like he could realistically, he would be around the age of, maybe not, older than AJ Styles, but not mid-50s is not old, especially with this day and age. I would have loved to have seen an AJ Styles Eddie Guerrero rivalry. I think that would have been amazing. I remember being crushed when I heard the news. As I was when I heard the news about Brian Pillman, like these active performers that you're like, no, I'm just used to seeing them on TV every week, and then all of a sudden they're gone. You're talking about Eddie Guerrero, who to this day, his legacy is as great as just about any performer I can think of. The amount of people that he has inspired, male and female, from Sasha Banks to Dominic Mysterio to everybody. You see a little Eddie everywhere when you watch professional wrestling. I think about when I think about my favorite Eddie moments, I think about him beating Brock Lesnar for the championship at No Way Out, and what a massive thing that was for Eddie. I think about WrestleMania 20 and the match with Kurt Angle. I think about the rivalry that he had with John Cena on SmackDown in like, what was that, like 03-ish. I think about, Los Guerreros on SmackDown in like 02, 03 with the Lowriders and everything. I think about, him coming in as one of the, what's it called, with Perry Saturn and all of them when they first came over from WCW. And it was like you had this group of guys that you knew had the ability, but just weren't getting the shot in WCW. It was a totally different thing. Like that the big star wasn't coming over. It was this group of guys that it's like we all know they can do it and they're just never going to get the shot. I think about Halloween Havoc and the match with Rey Mysterio. Halloween Havoc 1997. And you watch it now and it's still ahead of its time. If you did that match in 2025, you'd be like, I don't know what I just watched. But I can't praise Eddie Guerrero enough. I think about the rivalry with Rey Mysterio. And I'm not talking about the Halloween Havoc 97 rivalry. I'm talking about the custody of Dominic Mysterio ladder match rivalry and how that's an important part into one of the biggest stars in WWE today, Dominic Mysterio. I'm so saddened that we lost as much Eddie as we lost. And I'm so saddened that Eddie doesn't see and can't see how truly, utterly impactful he was on professional wrestling as a whole. I mean, it's just remarkable. Just a massive, massive part of the industry is Eddie Guerrero. And I'm glad you emailed that in, man. Steven writes in, I'm hoping, or Steve, you can talk me off the ledge. I'm beginning to become discouraged with the amount of in and out appearances from wrestling's biggest stars. For years, people have used the term attraction or the phrase, it makes it a bigger deal when you do see them to justify this. I understand all that. And I understand certain level superstars obviously have earned lighter schedules and more favorable deals. But don't you just miss the days of seeing the biggest stars weekly and entrenched in a story? I feel like all I have seen since WrestleMania 40 is Roman Reigns make sporadic returns for a big match and then disappear again for 2 to 3 months. It makes it so hard to invest in the returns anymore because I know he's just going to leave again after the next PLE. Yeah, okay, so here's my thought on this. I do think that it adds value, and I like the idea of bigger stars coming in and out because I think it means we get more from them. I think it means that it elongates their career. That said, I would rather see them gone for longer and then back for longer than gone and back and gone and back and gone and back. I would rather see, because you get a full-fledged story that way. I would rather see, if Roman's going to come back, know that we've got at least 3 months. Like, if Roman's coming back for War Games, I want him back till WrestleMania. I want to be able to have that time. And then if he leaves after WrestleMania again, that's fine. Now, if he's going to win the world title at WrestleMania, I could see where maybe that doesn't work. Maybe he stays from Survivor Series to Rumble, leaves for a while, comes back for the build to WrestleMania. But if he's going to be champion, defends it, I don't know. I'm hopeful that in 2026, we have more Roman. I would like to see that. Like somebody like Brock, I think is a little different because Brock, that's just, it works that way for everybody. I'm okay with people coming and going, but I like it when they're around longer so they can tell a full story before they go. I don't want to have to wait for them to come back because then I think that's where the investment trouble comes in. I'm not going to invest fully in this person if I think they're going to be gone within a few weeks. So, I think that's legit. Joe writes in, I hope all is well. Everyone throws around the whole Mount Rushmore thing like it just means a top 4 list, but it's not what it's supposed to be. It's about legacy, not ranking. So no, it's not. And I've talked about this before. So Mount Rushmore, everybody on Mount Rushmore is there for a specific reason. Guys, forgive the interruption. Do you ever skip meals? I know that I do, and it's a terrible, terrible thing to do. When I start skipping meals, that's when I realize that I can't get the things done that I need to get done. It's not just bad for my body. It's horrible for my energy level. I start to feel sick, and then I realize it's because I haven't eaten. But who's got time to eat? Well, Huel is here for you. I love Huel. This is the Huel Black Edition. 35 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, 27 essential vitamins and minerals, no added sugar, gluten-free. It's under $5 per meal. and it is ready to go. You just blast one of these and boom, you're off to the races. How about Huel's Daily Greens ready to drink? Developed by registered nutritionists and dietitians. I'm talking 42 vitamins, minerals, and superfoods. I'm talking only 25 calories, 4 grams of fiber, and only 1 gram of sugar. Huel makes healthy eating simple. And this is the big news. They have just launched into Target stores nationwide. You go up and down those aisles and you'll see Huel. You go, oh, that's the stuff Sam was talking about. Works for him. It'll probably work for me. You can try both products today with 15% off your purchase for new customers with my exclusive code NOTSAM at Huel.com/NotSam. Use my code, fill out the post-checkout survey, and it'll help support the show. The reason that these guys are on Mount Rushmore is George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln are there to represent America's foundation, expansion, development, and preservation. That's why those presidents are there. So if you're going to do a wrestling Mount Rushmore, you need to tell me which wrestlers are responsible for wrestling's foundation, expansion, development, and preservation. And there's a million directions you can go on that. We can have that debate. If I'm talking about like sports entertainment, I might put Flair on as the foundation, or maybe I'll put Andre on as the foundation, Hulk Hogan on for the expansion, The Rock on for the development, and John Cena on for preservation. Andre, Hulk, Rock, and John Cena absolutely work, but there's other people that work. I'm not so keyed in on it has to be these 4, but I am keyed in on this is why they have to be there. If you had to build a Mount Rushmore for the Attitude Era, you wrote it. One phase for the foundation, the expansion, development, and preservation. Who'd make the cut? So for the Attitude Era, you've got Stone Cold Steve Austin for the foundation, The Rock for the expansion, development is going to go to, development and preservation. The Attitude Era wasn't preserved. It was fleeting. You know what I mean? Maybe, you know what? Okay. Development, I'm going to give to Mick Foley because he turned you could have fun with the Attitude Era. You could be goofy in the Attitude Era. And then I guess preservation, maybe either Triple H or The Undertaker for preservation. Triple H because we still say suck it. Undertaker because he's the man. Could be Triple H. Could be Austin, Rock, Mick Foley, Triple H. Could be the answer. But sorry, I corrected you there without reading the second sentence. Avik writes in, what's the haps from London? I'm rarely right, but it was awesome to see Matt Cardona back in the WWE. Question, the MSG mystery guy could be Ziggler. What are you yeah, also, could Cena's final match at MSG, could it be with Brock Lesnar? It could, but I just don't know what that does. I don't know what another Brock Lesnar match does. Like, did you really have Brock Lesnar beat John Cena just so then John Cena can beat Brock Lesnar? Like, what's really the point of that? You just cancel each other out? It doesn't really do much for me. And I think Joe Hendry is more kind of, I would pick Joe Hendry, but if not Joe Hendry, Ziggler could be it. Kristen writes in, hello, my OPTC. My name is Kristen, and I am emailing you from the greatest city in the world, Cleveland. You should see some other cities. I had to. My 9-year-old daughter and I will be flying into LaGuardia on Monday for John Cena's final Raw. That's interesting, and I'll be listening to this on the flight. I love that. What's your favorite activity or hidden gem to do in Manhattan with kids? I would say you could go to FAO Schwartz. That's there in Rockefeller Center. If you go to Rockefeller Center, you go to FAO Schwartz, you can make your own Funko Pop. You go to the Lego store. If you go to Rockefeller Center, there's all these things that you could do there. I think that that's fun. Also, now that WWE PLE's era Disney Plus, does that make Roman Reigns a Disney princess? If he is, he's the tribal chief of them. Thank you, Kristen. Have a great time, by the way. Kenny writes in, I'll keep this quick. What do you think about bringing back some of the lower card titles like the European Championship? I miss those lower card matches. I don't, there's no reason for it. You could if you wanted to, but I don't see, you don't need titles to tell a story. You could just tell stories. I don't think you need to inundate with championships. It just makes it more difficult to keep up with everything. Now you got to defend them all. You got to maintain all the titles. Like, I don't sit there going, we need more titles. I don't think so. I'm not against it, but I don't think so. Joe writes in, Joe will be our last email of the day. Shout out to the OPTC. Here are some quick thoughts. Why do they keep burying Jordynne Grace? They don't keep burying Jordynne Grace. What are you talking about? She doesn't win every match, but they don't keep burying Jordynne Grace. Do you think it's leading to a heel turn, and would you like to see it? I'd be fine with Jordynne Grace heel turn, but I think that not everybody just gets to come in and be world champion instantly. That just like Jordynne Grace being a babyface and us following her and her eventually working up to being a champion is fine. Also turning heel is fine, but she's not getting buried. 2, if you could only call Oba or Trick to the main roster, which one would you prefer? That's ridiculous. They both are completely different. There's no reason why only one of those would be called to the main roster. I'm going to do another email after this one. And number 3, I'm dying to see Charlie Dempsey apologize to the no quarter catch crew when he's back from Japan after suckering them in for a beatdown going full Charlie Regal with William in his corner. Okay. Thank you, Joe. Let's go to Mitchell, who writes in, Sam, after the incredible result of Cena winning the Intercontinental Championship on Raw, how can our boy, the Dirty One, get it back? How do you like my idea of Cena offering Ray one last match at Survivor Series, Dom forcing his way into it, wanting a rematch, making a triple threat? I'm assuming Ray is healthy again after returning. Seems like a situation in which we all win as viewers. Now, okay, all right, Mitchell. What if Ray is John Cena's last match? What if Rey Mysterio is John Cena's last match at the Garden? Not the last match. I'm sorry, last match on Raw. What if at the Garden you do Rey Mysterio versus John Cena? Dominic costs his dad the match. And then that's how Dom gets another match with John Cena at Survivor Series. That's the way you could do it. That's one way. Hey, I'm just thinking, email in notsamwrestling@gmail.com. Subscribe on the YouTube channel, Not Sam Wrestling. Subscribe across all audio platforms. And we'll see you again. I'm assuming we're going to talk tomorrow. I bet there'll be a lot of Monday Night Raw to discuss. We'll see you then.